So good afternoon, everyone. This is Audrey Russo. It is a beautiful day in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but we have an amazing guest today. I will formally introduce her in a moment. Emily Kennedy, president and founder of Marinus Analytics. She's got a lot of amazing stuff to talk about. But before I start, I just want to give deep appreciation to Huntington Bank for the work that they've done with us over the year and more, helping us think through all our innovation and trying new things, and business as usual is definitely one of them. If you don't know Huntington Bank, you really should get to know them because they're very active in the small business community as well as civic engagement leaders. So also 40 by 80. That is the longitude and latitude of Pittsburgh, and it is the wholly owned subsidiary of the Pittsburgh Technology Council. And that's where we focus on workforce and entrepreneurship. And soon you're going to hear some more things that come out of 40 by 80 that relate to apprenticeship. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for our sponsors. And then I always want to remind people that this is an opportunity for you to listen, not to sell your wares. We put you on mute, but you have plenty of opportunities to chat and ask questions. So we're pretty excited because we have Emily, and there's so much that we want to ask. At least I know there's so much that I want to ask. And also, Jonathan Kirsting is with us, and he's vice president of all things marketing and media and storytelling. He has been telling stories and having his ear to the ground for over 20 years. There probably isn't a person that he doesn't know or he doesn't speak with. So he will be moderating the chat. So now I'm going to jump right in and introduce Emily Kennedy with Marinus Analytics. She is the CEO and founder. I hope I have that correct, Emily.
President and founder.
President and founder. There you go. President and founder. So, well, first of all, great to see you. And I'm very excited to sort of pack in, all the things that you've been doing and leading. But I always like to just start with, how are you? Who is Emily? And, I know you're a graduate from Carnegie Mellon. Are you originally from Pittsburgh? Tell us a little bit about your background that you're willing to share.
Sure. Thank you for having me on, Audrey, and you and the Pittsburgh Tech Council have been just a huge support to our company over the years. So thank you so much for having me on. So I am from Northern California originally, and very social impact minded teenager, and learned about human trafficking at a young age. And when it came time to go to college, for whatever reason, I had it in my head that I wanted to go really far away for college. I wanted to get out of California, wanted something new. I didn't have any family in Pennsylvania or anything, but applied to Carnegie Mellon. And it was kind of an unusual choice for me, I think, because I was very humanities focused. And you wouldn't necessarily think of that first when you think of Carnegie Mellon. But what happened when I applied was that they really looked at my application, I think, a lot more deeply than many other schools that just looked at the numbers. And I was able to get into the Humanities Scholars Program, and it was just a wonderful experience. And the humanities programs that they have at Carnegie Mellon are amazing. And then what I learned through being there, and then of course, as probably some people on here know, what my company ended up working on was really a direct result of the interdisciplinary nature of Carnegie Mellon. The fact that I, as a humanities student, could jump over and meet with someone in robotics, and they would actually take a meeting with me and brainstorm and say, what can we do together? And so that was really freaking awesome. And I will never stop singing the praises of Carnegie Mellon for that.
So yeah, that's a fabulous story. And it's really important because very often we, particularly at the Tech Council, forget that the richness of Carnegie Mellon, while it's definitely in comp sci and engineering, but there's, lots and lots of highly notable programs and as well as the arts, but humanities. So where were you raised in California?
I was raised in the Sacramento area. So,
okay,
sure. In the capital. Yeah.
Right. No, sure. So you've been in Pittsburgh for how long, and what made you stay?
So I'm actually currently in Colorado, funny enough. I used to be in California, then Pittsburgh, then California again. But that said, we are very much a Pittsburgh company. So I spent a good amount of time. And the way our company formed is kind of a long story, but just very organically formed. We weren't necessarily trying to start a company. It more happened as a response to a problem that we wanted to solve. And so after college, I had actually moved to California before we started the company, back home, because I wanted to be near family.
Okay.
But the interesting thing about that is that we are very much a Pittsburgh company. And the reason I say that is when I moved back to California, I moved to the Bay Area. And we had plenty of opportunities to, like, you know, start a Marinus office there, or like try to assimilate into Silicon Valley culture. And I saw all those opportunities. And at that time, I was CEO for our first 3-4 years of as a company. And I saw those opportunities and I'm like, that's just not us. There's a certain culture in Silicon Valley that's kind of, you know, everyone is the next Twitter, everyone's the next Uber sort of thing. And I just thought that's not our company culture. And I felt that our company soul really resonated with the Pittsburgh culture, which is, you know, hardworking, gritty, you know, scrappy, getting things done. And you know, in Silicon Valley, there's a lot of bragging first and then maybe doing something and actually making an impact later. And, you know, we were all about, we're going to actually do the thing and then maybe we'll talk about it later. And so we've always been a Pittsburgh company. The majority of our employees are there. We're about 10 employees now. And so we're, you know, now we're all remote, of course, with COVID. But yeah, still very much a Pittsburgh company at the core.
So that's very candid of you to sort of describe that in terms of the culture there. And so when you attract people from the West Coast to work for you, has that been successful?
No, it's all been people mostly in the Pittsburgh area, some from Carnegie Mellon, and then some from Pitt, some from other areas, and then some people who were trying to attract here, mainly what it's been recently is mainly from still the same general area surrounding states, but people who want to relocate to Pittsburgh. So that's exciting.
Yeah, that's great, because Jonathan and I always tell stories about that, and you've captured it really beautifully, but we always tell stories about that. And listening to you talk about that as you're birthing, you know, this company and what's important to you in terms of your values, it's easy to get skewed, right? It's easy to go off and make a left turn and just go, oh, screw it, we're just gonna, you know, acclimate into this new world, but you've kept your values. So that's amazing. That's amazing for someone who's just coming out of college as well.
Thank you.
Very tempting. So talk a little bit about the company. Let's really get into the bones of it, and then of course we'll talk about, you know, the AI XPRIZE and things like that. But let's talk about the company.
Sure. So it all started when I was a student at Carnegie Mellon. And as I mentioned, I had an interest in the topic of human trafficking, and particularly sex trafficking, for years, ever since I was a younger teenager. And really, you know, at that time, the internet was not as big as it is now. So the kind of resources and even the academic research around sex trafficking in particular was not that much. There was like a couple books. And so I tried to pick up information as I went, just as I could research or read books by myself and just educate myself. And so when it came time to write my senior honors thesis, and I was studying ethics, history, and public policy, I knew I wanted it to be about sex trafficking online somehow, but I didn't really know what that was going to look like. So I started kind of poking around, and originally was going to do more of a kind of literature summary, you know, look at the research that was out there and kind of synthesize my own conclusion about it. And then found there wasn't that much out there. There was like 1 or 2 papers about it. And that was going to be a very boring thesis if I did that. So I was brainstorming with a friend who's also a great Carnegie Mellon grad, Jessica Dickinson Goodman. And she and I were brainstorming about, okay, there's all this data online, you know, online sex ads, and there's a subset of those that are victims. Obviously, the majority of people posting online sex ads are likely at-will sex workers, but there's a subset that are trafficked, that are under the coercion of someone else. So how can we use that data in a valuable way, get insights out of it? And so I pitched this idea to my thesis advisor, Dr. Jay Aronson, and he said, sounds great, but you need to go find a technical advisor. I can advise you on the humanities side, but you need a technical person. So he gave me a list of people, and I emailed a bunch of people, and one of them was Dr. Artur Dubrowski, who's the director of the Auton Lab in the Robotics Institute. And they basically use machine learning to solve various social problems. And so I pitched my idea, and I kid you not, within like 3 or 4 hours, he emailed me back and said, come into my office tomorrow. So I came in, pitched him the idea, we kind of brainstormed. He started bringing in research scientists to like brainstorm. And I remember distinctly the moment I got out of that meeting. I was standing outside of Newell Simon Hall, and I thought, wow, I'm way in over my head, but I need to like chase this feeling. I just knew I needed to somehow. And so that basically turned into my senior honors thesis, which was basically the foundation for our software now, which is called Traffic Jam. And fast forward a couple of years, that turned into a research analyst job at the lab, where I was continuing this work, getting NIJ, National Institute of Justice funding for the research. And then we started getting this organic traction with law enforcement across the country. I mean, I had detectives in like Corpus Christi, Texas, calling me, can you help me find this victim? And so we realized, okay, we need to create a tool that they can use. It's not very productive for me to be like the bottleneck here. So that turned into meeting my other co-founder, our CEO, Kara Jones, and we with Dr. Dabrowski formed the company and spun it out of Carnegie Mellon in 2014. And since then have been able to productize the tool, bring it to multiple countries internationally, including the US, and support these law enforcement that are working these really serious human trafficking cases. So it's been a journey.
So let's wheel back. Yeah, it sounds like an incredible journey, but let's wheel back. Let's talk about the problem. Sure. Talk about what the problem is so people really understand. And then when you talk about it, also talk a little bit about the prevalence in Southwestern Pennsylvania, because I know that we are a hotspot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could you talk about both of those things?
Yeah, definitely. So sex trafficking online has become a lot more popular in the last 10 to 20 years, just with the advent of the internet. And it's been a tool that traffickers have leveraged to remain anonymous, to make it harder for law enforcement to actually detect the traffickers, the people who are exploiting. And the difference between, just to define it a little bit more, the difference between at-will sex work and trafficking is that in trafficking, there is, as the US law defines it, either force, fraud, or coercion. And this could be physical restraint, chains. It could be a trafficker getting a victim addicted to drugs to keep them under their thumb. It could be non-physical. It could be mental or emotional abuse. It could be taking someone's visa or their driver's license away. So there's a lot of different ways. It could be threats to family. It could be any number of things. And so that is what distinguishes trafficking specifically. And so, yeah, groups, areas like Pennsylvania, and we've worked with Pittsburgh FBI and groups there as well. Often hotspots are these areas where people are traveling. They're kind of nexuses for different areas. And so obviously Pittsburgh, highly populated, and people hate to hear it, but really we see this everywhere. It's everywhere, and it's irrespective of gender. Although women are the most commonly exploited, men can be too, boys and girls as well. And the traffickers are not necessarily who you expect. Sometimes traffickers can be women, they can be rich, they can be poor. There's just a whole gamut. So it's a very complex problem.
Wow. And so how prevalent is this? Like, could you give us in terms of, density of the problem, what percentage of a population or young people under 18? Can you tell us about that?
It's a very good question, and it's very difficult to answer.
Okay.
The stats are honestly really not good, and I hate to say that. I wish they were better. And if there's any researchers listening, we need better stats. So anything you can do to help.
Okay.
The one stat I like to point to, because I think it's the most concrete stat, is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which is a national nonprofit that we support. They use Traffic Jam every day to filter the child sex trafficking tips that they get in. And then obviously they work on the larger issue of missing children in general. And they estimate that around 1 out of 6 children that they encounter were likely trafficked. So it's a pretty large percentage when you're looking at missing children, and very tragic, of course.
Right. So here you are what is your business model? Like, how is it that you generate revenue? Are you a nonprofit?
Great question. So we are a for-profit LLC, and we have a SaaS, software as a subscription model. So law enforcement subscribes, and then we donate to, NCMEC, the National Center. But it's at an affordable price, not like Palantir prices or anything like that. Just so that we can keep the lights on, we can continue doing what we're doing. But something interesting about how we got there, because it was difficult to go from, zero to hero within like a year to actually have a sustainable business model. So it's taken us a couple of years to get there. And the kind of non-traditional way that we bootstrapped, because we never took any VC investments, and I'm pretty proud of that. There's obviously a time to do that, but we wanted to maintain our mission and not be distracted or pushed away from our core mission. So some non-traditional methods of funding that I like to tell people about, just to know that there's other ways of doing it.
Talk about
it. So a number of different things, but when we started out, we were fortunate enough to get on a DARPA contract. We were subcontracted to Carnegie Mellon. So that was a really great idea. And we were subject matter experts for human trafficking on that project. Then we applied for the National Science Foundation Small Business Innovation Research, SBIR funding. I actually got the chance mid last year to testify in front of Congress about why the NSF funding is so important for high risk, high reward research. So we were able to secure that, not unrestricted, but it wasn't like take a percentage of the company type of research funding. It was grants that we were able to use, and then various pitch competitions. So there was the Pittsburgh XPRIZE competition, and then of course this AI Watson IBM XPRIZE.
I want to talk about that right now.
Yeah, so various things that helped.
Well, let's talk about that. So last month, and I know they extended it, we learned that your company is the last North American finalist for the IBM Watson AI prize. I know that they extended it. I think I read that they had extended it through COVID. But this is massive. It's what, $5 million of unencumbered money?
Yeah, it's crazy. So it's, I think we're in the 5th year of the competition now, because it was supposed to end last June, I think. Yeah, and it got pushed. So now hopefully the finals will happen this June. We don't know what that will look like, but we're hoping that'll happen in June. And yeah, it's the first prize is $3 million. The second prize is $1 million, and the third prize is $500,000. So just game changing, unrestricted funding. There. It's crazy.
So what's the journey now? What's sort of the next? What are we waiting for? Are there things that we can do to sort of help? Is there voting? Is there noise we can make? Is there endorsement?
Oh my gosh, I love that question. So the unfortunate answer is I don't know, but I will tell you as soon as I know, because they're still figuring it out. Like, it was supposed to be an in-person event last year. Obviously, that didn't happen. And it was supposed to be voting related. So I don't know if they'll still have voting. I think they will, but I don't know who will get to vote, if it will be like anyone or if it will be only attendees of a certain conference. So I'll keep you posted, because we would love your help. But right now, all I can say that I know is that they're aiming for June, but might be virtual, might be, we just don't know yet.
Well, how does it work though? Tell us a little bit about how that process works, so that people can really gain an appreciation.
The journey.
How tough that is. And there, I think, were 2 or 3 companies from Pittsburgh.
Yeah, there was a great amount of representation from Pittsburgh, and it started out with, and if anyone wants the exact details, they can check the press release on our website, but there was like, I think 170 companies that originally started out, and this was worldwide, companies from anywhere in the world. And then they had, a bunch of different checkpoints, basically one a year, if I recall correctly, where they would like narrow down. And so it was like, okay, now we made it to the top 50, and then we made it to the top 25. And I thought, I honestly, Kara was the one who applied us for this. And I thought, there's no way we're gonna make it to the end of this. I mean, there's just too many good companies. Like, how could we possibly? But we thought, let's go along on this journey. And so it was a great journey, because there was checkpoints where we had to explain what we were doing, and just verbalize and make clear, what our mission was, and all these different things. So that was helpful, just for clarifying what we were doing. And we tried to view it as, whether we win or not, let's use this process for our benefit, that we can grow
Mhm.
as a company. And so then this was like end of 2019. I remember, I think we were at top like 20 or so, and they were about to narrow it down to top 10. And again, I was like, there's no way. Like, I
Mhm.
wasn't even like thinking we would be included. So then I get an email from the XPRIZE people, and they say, can you jump on this Zoom with us, at this time? And I'm like, oh no, here it comes. Like, oh no. And so I get on and they said, you're a semi-finalist. So this is top 10. And I was like, oh my gosh, because I wasn't like mentally prepared for the work that it was going to take after that. I had just written it off. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. So I told the team. And then once we made it over that hump to the final 10, I told my team, okay, before I thought there's no way we're going to win this. Now we have to win. This is our
Yeah.
competition to win, and we're going to do everything we can do to win this. So we put a lot of effort into, prepping for the semifinals pitch, which was at TED headquarters in New York City in February of last year, right
Oh,
before
wow. Yeah.
everything happened. And then we got selected as a one of the top 3, and that was a very rigorous process. So it was I believe 3-minute, basically like a 3-minute TED talk in front of a live audience at TED HQ. And then after that, we had to go in front of a panel of, I think, 10 or 15 XPRIZE judges and be grilled for, I think, about a half an hour. And I remember prepping for that. It was in this hotel, and all the teams were in this one room at our tables, and I was like listening to rap music and furiously typing away on my computer, because that's how I prepare for like being grilled, is Q&A. Like, here's all the things they could ask us. I want to have
Right.
all the answers. So came in with my like stack of papers and just, frantically answering questions. And, it's kind of hard to tell how well you did, because it's
Right.
such a, like chaotic experience. But I thought, I think we did well. So let's see.
So that's great. So wait a second. Which companies in Pittsburgh? Were there any other companies in the finalists or not? Do you know?
Not in
If
the
you don't
top
know,
3. And then I
not
think
in the top 3.
behavior was one of the ones that made it really high
Okay.
up. That's one that comes to mind. Yeah.
Okay. So there's a question there from Mark Freeman, Jonathan, if you can just grab that. And because, and I want to make sure that everyone understands the technology itself in traffic jam. So before we end, there's 2 things.
Yeah.
The technology, and then Mark Freeman's question.
Let's do it. So welcome to the show. So glad to have you here. Your story is so amazing. We are so pumped for you. That is for sure.
Thank you.
So let's start with Mark real quick. He says in July 2011, there was a contemporary dance production by Canadian performer Heather Clark at the New Hazlitt Theatre in connection with the founders of an international group called Love 146 that went undercover to witness child trafficking and held a Q&A with the audience. Where donations benefit the Pittsburgh-based project to end human trafficking. I'm just curious how these organizations might benefit from your company's technology and vision.
I love that question. And those are some great organizations. So great question, Mark. So specifically, Project to End Human Trafficking, I've worked alongside Mary Burke, Dr. Mary Burke from the Project to End Human Trafficking, actually since college. I asked her to come speak to my club when I was an undergrad, because she's such an expert in the area of human trafficking. So learn from her. And then recently I got a chance, she asked me to write a book chapter for a textbook that she is the editor of on technology and human trafficking. So she's fantastic. And, organizations like Love 146, nonprofits that work in the victim side of things and victim services are wonderful and absolutely needed. And I think where we fit in is being able to work alongside those groups to bring best practices to our users, because there absolutely needs to be collaboration between detectives and social workers and nonprofits. And I could talk about this all day, but we're seeing, in these eras and these conversations of defund the police. Well, my understanding is that it's not about completely getting rid of the police. It's about directing some funding towards social workers that can collaborate with police. And we've actually seen really amazing examples of this. Denver Police Department has done this and implemented, basically in short, a program where they have social workers on call who can deal with people with mental health issues. And they found that a huge percentage of the calls that this group got was actually from law enforcement, because they said, you know, we're not equipped to deal with this situation. We want you, the expert, to come in. And so obviously we are not law enforcement, we are not government, we can't force these changes, but we want to use the position of you know, influence that we have with our users to say, this is the best practices we're seeing in Denver. This is the best practices we're seeing in the United Kingdom, where sex work is legal, and they are very focused on safeguarding victims. And so seeing how we can be a part of bringing those best practices in, and then also just as much as we can encouraging law enforcement agencies to connect with victim services agencies who do really important work.
So what about the technology, real quick? So tell us how how traffic jam works.
Sure. So every day there are hundreds of thousands of online ads selling sex just in the US. It's a lot of data. We just surpassed 450 million data points in traffic jam.
Wow.
So when you think about that, that's not something you want to manually process. So the whole goal of traffic jam is applying AI to this data to help law enforcement get better insights to find victims. So it's not a silver bullet, you know, it's serving them up a victim on a silver platter. Being able to use text analysis and things to identify which one is a victim versus not is very difficult. It's very difficult for even a human to do that. So our goal is to narrow down the amount of information that law enforcement needs to process into you know, a small enough amount that they can actually manually read it, use their expertise to make decisions. So all different types, it's a suite of different types of tools, everything from text analysis to image analysis to alerts and like simpler search. So a whole broad range of things.
So is there a use case that maybe you can give us one example?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was one example, and the full story is on our website. It's called Allie's story under articles if you want to read the whole story. But basically there was a really violent trafficker. He had over 20 different victims. He was making a ton of money off of them. And he was one of the most violent that I have personally encountered. I mean, they're all violent in some way, but you know, I'm talking about some serious violence. And so one of his main victims actually reached out for help to a detective who works human trafficking, fantastic detective out of Texas. And so she reached out for help, and he started building this case. He used traffic jam and all the tools in it to identify, oh crap, there's actually like 20 different victims, to identify the ads where they were advertised and be able to piece together where and when they were advertised. He was able to put together this case in a span of a couple months, and he said it would normally take him a couple years to put together this case manually. So the time was really crucial, and he was able to catch that trafficker. The trafficker is looking at life in prison for everything he's done. And the best thing about this, you would think it's just the trafficker being in prison, but the best thing about this is that the girl who came forward originally, and we call her Allie, it's all anonymized in the story, but she is was in recently community college, looking at transferring to a four-year school, and she is just doing really well. So that story of like rebirth is really amazing to me.
So yeah, we only have a little bit of time left, and I want to get two things in. First, are you hiring?
We are hiring, yes.
You're hiring, great. What are you hiring for?
Yeah, so if you want to see the full job descriptions, you can go to marinusanalytics.com, and under contact, click on careers. We're hiring for software engineers, we're hiring for product analysts, and some machine learning experts. So if you fit any of those, or you're just interested, thank you. There's the link in the chat. Check those out. Or if you don't see a job description, but you just really want to work with us, just send us a message anyway.
Yeah, that is awesome. And of course she loves Pittsburgh talent, and she loves the values here. So you heard that early on. And then you have a podcast. So tell us about the podcast and the topics that you cover.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So it's called the Empower Podcast. And I interview mainly women CEOs and founders and leaders, because in the course of my work, I've met so many amazing women, and I'm just like, these are the people who I'd want to listen to interviews of, but often they're not the flashiest. They're not, bragging about themselves all the time. So I wanted to have a place they could brag about themselves on my podcast. And so it's women from all different types of, there's nonprofits, executive directors, there's tech companies. Usually there's some intersection of AI and tech and women in entrepreneurship, and then social impact. So usually there's at least 2 of those in every episode. I recently interviewed Kenny Chen. I see he's on the chat there.
I see he's here.
And that
he's
was
he's stirring up the the chat. So that's great.
I love it. Yeah, and he was great. We talked about AI and ethics, and so check that out if you're interested in that.
No, that's awesome. So how are we going to keep track of you? We got to figure out how we can help you win. Okay.
Great question.
I help you win.
We've got to win. So for anyone just wanting to keep up with what we're doing, you can sign up for our newsletter on our website. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the first page, you can do that there. We're also on Twitter at Marinus AI. And if you're interested in supporting, you can just send me a message on LinkedIn. You can send us an email.
Great.
And then as soon as I know what is happening with the finals, I will let you know, Audrey.
No, I have to know because now I'm in my competitive mode, right?
I love it.
And when I'm in the competitive mode, it's we're going after that ring. We're going after that.
Let's do it, okay? All of us.
So let's do it. So Emily, thank you for taking the time. I know you're busy. I'm glad you're safe. What's the name of your dog?
This is Penny. She's napping.
I see her napping. So I just wanted to see, everyone to see Penny. Okay, awesome. And we're gonna keep close tabs on you so that we can do whatever we can to make sure not only that you win, but that you find talent and that you get sort of the recognition and exposure that you so deserve.
Love it.
So thanks so much for joining us. Stay safe in Colorado, and we will be in touch. Thanks everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.